Welcome to Shook Cover. We squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here for another review. Dalton, tell them what we're doing this time.
Doing a short story this time. This is by William Faulkner. This is That Evening Sun, or That Evening Sun Go Down. Multiple titles for this piece, so a little confusing.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit. We may have different versions here, because mine is titled That Evening Sun Go Down. You have That Evening Sun.
Right.
The husband in this piece is named different things.
Right.
And I believe that was a censorship issue that they had when this was originally published. I think this is the original text here, and this is what was printed later. So it's no change in the meat of the piece here.
Well, I think now that I think about it, is going to necessitate at least one change.
Okay.
So what is the husband's name in your piece?
Let me double check here. What is the husband's name in your piece?
No, what is the husband's name in your piece?
Okay. Jubba.
Jubba? In mine, it's Jesus.
Yes.
But one of my points is that we know it is Jesus and not Jesus because one of the kids mistakes the language at one point and says, no, the other Jesus.
Okay, interesting. I didn't catch on that one. Now, there was one point in here where it threw me off a little bit because I did read the little preface to this from where I printed it, and it said that it was changed from Jubba to Jesus.
Okay.
Or Jesus to Jubba, excuse me. And at one point, Nancy, we're just jumping straight into this, Nancy says, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Is she speaking to Jesus?
Is she
or
praying,
is she speaking to
or
Jesus?
is she warding off?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So a couple different weird things here. We can talk about that. Editions do change over time. You never know what you're going to get. People still can't decide what Emily Dickinson wrote, and that's fine and dandy.
You shut your dirty mouth.
I try. What good things do you have about this? Do you have three good?
I've got three good things.
Okay.
One, this is big, this is heavy, and this is dense.
Yeah.
You know there's things going on here.
Yeah.
Number two, it is interesting to see genius experimenting in this way, i.e. the story breaks.
Okay.
Do you have story breaks in yours?
I do, yes.
Okay. And three, there is no escape here. This is real, and this is uncomfortable.
Yep.
On many levels.
Yes, it is. Good thing. If you want to learn voice and dialogue, might I suggest starting here. There's some good characterization and some great voice from these characters in here. You get a huge sense of that, which leads me to the next point. These characters, although very briefly known, are very well developed. And they are very realistic.
Faulkner was a master.
And that's what makes this uncomfortable. And finally, there is a mountain of things crammed in this piece. An absolute mountain. You are correct, it is very dense, and there is a lot going on here. And you are correct in the aspect that this will make you uncomfortable. As it should.
Yeah.
As it should. Good literature should make you uncomfortable.
Right. Three bad things. Number one, some of the story details and pacing here were, for me, confounding at best.
Okay.
Two, the title, I may be mistaken. I think it's over my head. I know what the evening sun is. I know that evening sun go down. I know what that is sort of in reference to. I don't know that we get there. I don't know that the piece necessitates it.
Okay.
With some of the surrounding literature.
Okay.
And three, I'm really not sure about the ending.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. My first bad thing is this is a difficult piece to follow and to read, let alone interpret. A lot of strange going on here, but like it's not surrealist strange like we talked about with other things. This is just bizarre. Just bizarre. The reader here is left to their own interpretations. And there's very little to grasp here. Like, you want to reach for this, maybe this is what's happening, maybe this is what's happening, but there is no concrete evidence for you to, like, put a foundation down for yourself to get into this piece. And finally, the two children, Quentin and Katie, I went with Katie, Caddy.
Yeah.
They very much blend together to me.
Okay.
Distinguishing them gets a little difficult every now and then.
Yeah.
Okay. Where would you like to start?
What do you have quotes?
I do. I have one quote. Towards the end here, I can't give you a page number because, again, this is printed for me. But we could still hear her. She began as soon as we were out of the house, sitting there above the fire, her long brown hands between her knees. We could still hear her when we had crossed the ditch, Jason high and close and a little above Father's head. Then we had crossed the ditch, walking out of Nancy's life. Then her life was sitting there with the door open and the lamp lit, waiting. and the ditch between us and us going on, dividing the impinged lives of us and Nancy. That's good writing right there. That's good. I enjoy this.
For me, I've got several quotes written down. I think I'm going to use some of them as fodder for another one of my points.
Okay.
So I'm just going to, again, read the opening.
Okay.
I do that a lot in these, and I think the opening is important to the piece because you're setting the tone for the entire thing.
Okay.
And here you're doing a lot more than just tone setting. Monday is no different than any other weekday in Jefferson now. The streets are paved now, and the telephone and electric companies are cutting down more and more of the shade trees, the water oaks, the maples, and the locusts and elms, to make room for iron poles bearing clusters of bloated and ghostly and bloodless grapes. And we have a city laundry which makes the rounds on Monday morning, gathering the bundles of clothes into bright-colored, specially made motor cars. The soiled wearing of the whole week now flees apparition-like, behind alert and irritable electric horns, with a long diminishing noise of rubber and asphalt like tearing silk, and even the Negro women who still take in the white people's washing after the old custom fetch and deliver it in automobiles. That is 2 sentences.
Yes. Yes.
That's Faulkner.
Yes. I did make a point comment. I'm like, run-ons here, Faulkner. Calm yourself. However, 2 sentences fine. Run-on's fine. The first sentence that catches you with that, and I don't know why, iron poles bearing clusters of bloated and ghostly and bloodless grapes. That is beautiful. That is nice.
We've got to get into more Faulkner on the channel because
Yes.
Faulkner is someone personally that I fall deeper in love with every time I read him, even if
Okay.
it's the same piece over again.
Okay. But no, when I first read this, I sat down and like that line hit me. I'm like, all right. Didn't expect that just out of the gate there.
Right.
Doesn't really add much to this piece. Doesn't mean anything huge to this piece, but like, goddamn, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it does add a lot to the... I think that whole opening paragraph is doing a lot more there than just opening the story.
Okay. Where would you like to begin with this one? At what talking point do we want to get in here? Because there's a lot of ways you can go with this.
Okay, so just list them.
Okay. What is going on with our character Nancy?
So are you talking broad talking points?
Broad talking points.
okay.
What are we talking about in this
We're
story
talking
here?
about spousal abuse.
Okay.
We're talking about abusive relationships
All right.
and the reciprocity thereof.
Okay.
We're talking about racism.
Yes.
We're talking about times they are a-changin'.
Okay.
We're talking about Southern poverty.
Yeah.
We're talking about so many things here, but he never says a damn thing about any of them.
Nope.
We're just being presented the situations as they are.
You are literally diving headfirst into this situation. You're diving into the deep end, and it's never addressed. And what's even going on with just the characters alone? There's a lot of things going on with them, and it's never addressed. What's going on specifically with Nancy?
Nancy is whoring herself
Yeah.
to white men,
Yep.
and she's pregnant.
Yep. Who got her pregnant?
Was it the pharmacist?
Are we sure?
We're not sure, but he's someone that she's been sleeping with.
This is absolutely true. And I think there's like some implications there. Like, I think the father got her pregnant.
Really?
Yeah.
So he does have a fatherly tone with her.
He has a fatherly tone with her. He is constantly leaving his wife to care for her. The wife even goes to the point of saying, why are you always caring for this woman? Why are you going out of your way for this woman?
But he has also, didn't he at some point say, if you just left white men alone?
True. He's also taking his kids to be around this woman. She is taking a liking to his children. She is trying to raise his children.
I don't know. I don't know that she's trying to. She knows things can't go down with white children present, or there will be a lynch mob.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
She knows that
She's using them for protection.
Sure, in this society, if Jesus just straight up murks her, is he going to pay for it?
Probably not.
If Jesus straight up murks her with a white child in the room, does he pay for it?
Yes, he does.
Okay. So one of the other things that this opens up is the discussion of racism. Not just racism, but the nuances therein.
Yes.
So look, it's easy to just sweep under the rug the assumption of people being a victim of their times. Like the father figure here, it could easily be explained away that he's a victim of his time.
Okay.
In that, he does not hate Nancy. He doesn't even seem to hate Jesus.
Okay.
But he assumes they are lesser people.
Because that is the circumstance which he is given. That is where he is raised. That's what he knows.
And in that assumption, he takes a very fatherly tone with Nancy.
Okay, he treats her as an inferior, treats her as a child.
He treats her as inferior, he treats her as a child, but he feels responsibility for her.
Okay.
He's willing to say, you're just going to wait here for 10 minutes and I'm going to walk her home.
Okay.
If I walk her home, she'll be fine.
Okay.
Right? She's worried. Let me comfort her.
But again, that really brings up my question on this one here. Is this just a good, decent man trying to do the best he can? Or is he walking her home because, again, he feels an obligation to her? Because that is his child that she is carrying.
I would be interested to see you dig deeper into that because I didn't pick up any of that.
The whole time I read it, that is all I could think of.
Okay.
Because there was even this scene where Nancy is sleeping in a pallet in the home.
Right.
And the father gets out of bed at night.
To check on her.
Okay.
Okay.
And all the children say is there were assumptions that Nancy was crying.
A wailing.
And she was a wailing when he left. I honestly think that this is a very clever, cover for the father here that, there is this nice fatherly figure. It's great. I wholeheartedly believe he is raping Nancy.
Okay.
It's a very strange piece.
Okay.
And it's a very difficult piece to talk about.
Yeah, and it's difficult on all sorts of levels, not just that one. So you've got, Jesus says when they're having a brief conversation about the fact that Nancy is pregnant, but they're having this conversation sort of in code because the children are around.
Mm-hmm. She's carrying a watermelon.
She's carrying a watermelon. And he says, well, I know where that watermelon is from and I'll cut the vine. Right? Mm-hmm. Very covetous.
Okay.
Right? In startlingly terrifying fashion. She's afraid Jesus is going to kill her.
Yes, wholeheartedly.
But when they are on, I think it's when they're on that trek home, when they're walking Nancy home, I think it's the father figure says something about he's probably gone off to another city and found a woman. And Nancy says, I'll kill her. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So this is a covetous relationship from both ends.
Okay.
Right? You fully get
It's hard to talk about.
It's hard to talk about.
But you mentioned earlier that this is it is a piece of poverty. Everything takes place in a very, very impoverished area.
Southern poverty.
Southern poverty. It's a thing. It seems to be a thing in an impoverished area. If the man runs off with a woman, his woman's going to get that other woman. But if she runs off with a man, he's going to get that man, but they're still together out of circumstance and out of necessity.
And out of love. So it's difficult to talk about in today's social climate.
It is.
But there is a very real, a very palpable sense of love between the two here.
And you know it. You know it's a thing. Whether you can put your finger on it or not, you know it.
Well, it's something that... So this is a strange piece. I bet when this piece was penned, that type of relationship was not as risque to talk about.
Okay.
Right? People who are violently in love with each other in that way. So it's difficult to talk about. We're on BookTube, right?
Yeah.
The PCist corner of YouTube, right? Of a very PC platform. It's very difficult to talk about those things, but you turn on rap music. Eminem has 3 songs about this on every album he's ever released.
This is true.
Right?
True statement.
I'm going to tie you to the bed and set the house on fire. Right?
Okay.
So even in today's social climate, there are places where every woman I know loves that song. Every woman I know loves that song.
Okay.
You know the one I'm talking about?
I don't.
Where he's with Rihanna sings the chorus. I can't think of what it's called, but he says, "If you ever leave me again, I'll tie you to the bed and set the house on fire." The whole chorus is about, "I love the way you burn," or "I burn," or something like that. I don't remember. Either way, it's about a very duplistically abusive relationship.
Okay. Now, Nancy, in this particular story, seems to be definitely a victim of abuse. So much so where her fear has led her to the point of downright insanity. Nancy has lost her mental stability throughout this piece, so much so that she believes that her husband he's in the ditch.
Right.
I see him in the ditch and he is coming to get me.
I see Jesus.
I see Jesus.
So that's something that your version loses.
Yes.
Is the irony and the uncomfortability of saying Jesus is going to kill me.
Okay.
Jesus is hiding in the bushes. Jesus is hiding around the corner.
Yeah?
Jesus is watching me. But it's not the good watching.
Okay.
Jesus isn't watching out for me. Jesus is a watching.
But is that an admission of guilt and an admission of sin? Whereas Nancy sees what she's doing in these situations is wrong in the eyes of her God, but she's doing them out of necessity to survive, but she knows that sin's going to catch up with her. Jesus is going to get her.
Right, but even then, we have some question as to whether or not this is out of necessity.
Okay.
Because she's sleeping with, is it the pharmacist, I think?
The pharmacist.
The
yes.
pharmacist who hasn't paid her the last 3 times.
Correct.
So if you're running a business, you don't continue to write that check, do you? You don't continue to sell those goods.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
No, not right?
No.
Okay.
When you
okay.
are at this level and like it just in Nancy's current mental state, in the situation she's in, that's a thing, man. You continue, it sounds strange to put it this way, but you go to work every day.
Yeah.
Paycheck's going to come eventually.
And he's a pharmacist.
It didn't show up this week, but he's good for it, and I'm going to continue doing my job.
Okay.
And that's a terrible way to put this. But that's what's happening here.
Well, this is a terrible story.
It is.
Right?
It is. It is a very horrific story. It is. It's uncomfortable. I'm going to just continue to say uncomfortable and smile and nod.
Yeah, I think uncomfortable
Okay.
is the absolute best way to speak about it.
Did you have something you wanted to really get into here before we start getting into this ending?
Okay. Yeah. So I've made a point on the channel many times in the past that says good writing teaches you how to read it.
Okay.
Right? Such is not the case with Faulkner.
Okay.
It's definitely good writing. I think that you have to stumble upon how to read it.
Okay.
So I've got this quote from what is 347 in my book. It is under the subheading 4. I'm going to read it like you would read Hemingway first.
Okay.
And it's very bad. And then I'm going to read it how I think Faulkner writes.
intended to read. Okay.
I know another story, Nancy said. She stood close to the lamp. She looked at Caddy, like when you close your eyes up a... God damn it. She looked at Caddy, like when you close your eyes up at a stick balanced on your nose. She had to look down to see Caddy, but her eyes looked like that, like when you were balancing a stick. That's Hemingway, right?
Okay.
Here's Faulkner. I know another story, Nancy said. She stood close to the lamp. She looked at Caddy, like when your eyes look up at a stick balanced on your nose. She had to look down to see Caddy, but her eyes looked like that, like when you are balancing a stick. You have to slow Faulkner down.
Okay. You have to slow it down, but you have to let it flow. You can't give it the Hemingway staccato.
Right.
Okay.
Jason, Mother said. She was speaking to Father. You could tell that by the way she said the name. Like she believed that all day Father had been trying to think of doing the thing that she wouldn't like the most. And that she knew all the time. See, it's impossible
hard to read
almost
that way.
to read it like
Okay.
Hemingway. But when you slow it down, Jason, Mother said. She was speaking to Father. You could tell that by the way she said the name. Like she believed all that day Father had been trying to think of doing the thing that she wouldn't like the most. And that she knew all the time that after a while he would think of it. I stayed quiet. Because Father and I both knew that Mother would want him to make me stay with her if she just thought of it if she just thought of it in time.
Okay.
So Father didn't look at me. I was the oldest. I was 9, Caddy was 7, and Jason was 5. But even those last couple sentences, if you read them like Hemingway. So Father didn't look at me. I was the oldest. I was 9, Caddy was 7, and Jason was 5. Right?
Okay.
Like
It's very interesting to look at it from a linguistics standpoint, whatever you want to say. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, you do have to put some emphasis in this.
You've got to slow it down. You've got to breathe between sentences.
Okay.
Because this is told by a fire.
Okay.
Right? Hemingway is very editorial.
Yes.
You're getting this from the newspaper. All of Hemingway's short stories you're getting from a newspaper column.
Okay.
Faulkner got a story for you.
Okay.
Sit down.
It's a very Southern thing. Sit down, tell the story. And I think it's very interesting. When you brought up that point, I started thinking about Nancy's dialogue throughout this. I think that Southern, slow drawl is forced upon you through Nancy's dialogue, which sets you into reading in that tone.
But and here's another thing when we're going back to race. When you read Nancy's, were you ever tempted to say, Faulkner's not writing a black woman, Faulkner's writing a stereotype of a black woman? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
Absolutely, until what? Until Dad, so y'all is one of the words that, oh, that's not real. Faulkner, what are you doing? He uses y'all, Nancy says y'all, and she says something else. But at the very end of the story, the father uses both of those words.
Yes.
And then you realize, no. Okay, I see what you're doing.
Southern.
Yeah, this is Southern. This isn't making fun, because this isn't Gooford Grapevine.
Okay.
This isn't Gooford Grapevine where it's someone saying, I know those blacks talk a different way. Let me try to transcribe that language.
It feels, it's real. It is real, and it is this time, and it is this place. But it feels so stereotypical because it is that real. It's hard to...
And it's not just Nancy.
And it's not just Nancy.
Right.
It's a thing. Now, you did mention the end. And you said you didn't like this ending.
Yeah.
What are you missing from this ending here?
So the ending is as such.
And there is lack of resolution in this ending.
I wouldn't, Jason said. You'd cry, Caddy said. Caddy, Father said. I wouldn't, Jason said. Scary cat, Caddy said. Candace, Father said.
Okay.
Like, I don't see the larger context from that.
There's no reason for it to be there.
Right.
Okay. And I peeped over your shoulder here because scary is definitely spelled incorrectly in my edition here. And like, there might be something with that there if we're talking linguistics and the South. On a broader spectrum here, what happens to Nancy in the end?
We don't know.
We don't know. Nancy is left to her own demise.
Right.
And like is it in that edition?
I believe it is.
I'll be pissed if it is because I didn't see it.
Go on with your point.
That is something like I always try to read a little bit about the short story after I read the short story and try to piece some things together about the author a little bit. That is one of the big issues with this piece is what happens to Nancy. Now, I haven't read other Faulkner. I know you have. But apparently these characters are reoccurring characters. And I want to say... Did you plan this?
Well, they're all Yachtopanoff County.
Okay.
Is the big thing with Faulkner.
Okay. One of the other stories, one of the other novels, I don't remember which one, references Nancy's bones.
Really?
In a ditch.
Wow.
So once you put these pieces together, I think that adds a hell of a lot to this.
Sure, yeah. And that's another one of the things that William Faulkner was so revolutionary about Faulkner, was that all of these stories take place, all of these families know each other.
Okay.
All the families that he writes about know each other. So when you get into stories like Barn Burning, and you get into As I Lay Dying, where there's a barn burning was a very big thing.
Okay.
And so he's writing about scoundrels who all know each other.
It's very Spoon River Anthology, which I've tried to get you to read forever. Everything is connected.
But we're talking intertextual.
Yes.
We're talking novels and short stories.
True. I would just like to point out here, and like I wanted to bring this up earlier, when trying to find these pieces here, because we decide what we're going to read, and like we go back to our own homes and like pull out the books. I'm not going to say I have a huge library, but for the most part, I have a pretty extensive library compared to the normal person. I could not find this piece. I went through every book I had. The one book that I've used for 2 other reviews this week, it was in.
Yeah.
And now I'm pissed. Thank you. Anyway, do you have any other final thoughts on this?
I've got a lot I want to talk about.
Okay.
The Evening Sun. What is the Evening Sun?
I wrote that down a little. What does the Evening Sun suggest? The Evening Sun suggests, without, reference to Nancy's bones, that Nancy does die in the end. The sun has set.
Well, so the Evening Sun is also representative in literature at large of judgment.
Okay.
The day is long, but it is ending.
Okay.
It is representative of things coming to a close. So we do get that. But unless I've misread, everything here happens in the morning or night. Am I wrong? It's morning or night.
Don't believe you're wrong.
We never really see the sun setting. So I don't know why. Like, I understand at night, it's after judgment, it's time for retribution.
Okay, but if you're going on a judgment standpoint, if you want to call this piece that Evening Sun, judgment is coming. If we want to look at, like, Nancy as the sinner who has done all these horrible things, judgment's coming for Nancy. If you want to look as Jesus as the person who is the issue here, judgment's coming for him. Judgment's coming for the father if it's implied that the father raped Nancy. Judgment's coming for the children in the aspect that their adolescence is being broken now. They are starting to see the world around them as it is.
We do have the child is constantly questioning things,
yes.
Right? But then why don't we have the story taking place during that time? If that's what you wanted, if that is so important to this piece, that it becomes the title.
And we could sit here and argue again, why is this originally called That Evening Sun Go Down, as compared to just That Evening Sun? And I did read about this, and I wish I had prepared it. I believe this had another title before they settled on That Evening Sun. So maybe this was just like the first title, they didn't like it, so he's just like, whatever, call it what you want. I will have to look it up, and maybe we'll get back to this at a different time. But there was an alternative title to this. I guarantee it. Anyway, running very short on time here. There's a lot to talk about with Faulkner. How do you want to proceed with this?
Rating? Do you have a rating?
I do have a rating. You ain't gonna like it.
What is it?
It made me uncomfortable. It was difficult to read. I gave it 80 run-on sentences out of 100.
Okay. I gave this 88 Evening Suns out of 100.
Okay. A little better than me. A little better.
There's a lot going on here, isn't there?
I was
think
afraid
that
to.
warrants a few points.
I was afraid to say this was average.
Oh, it's not average.
It's not average. It is damn good. But
What do you
I wasn't
recommend?
crazy about it. I would recommend Agnes of God, John Pellmeyer. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's actually a play, and it has a lot to do with basically a nun is in a convent. She is pregnant, and it deals with Immaculate Conception, whether she was raped, whether it was Immaculate Conception. And from my vibes I got from this, it was very, very similar.
Okay. I think if you're going to read this, you have to read As I Lay Dying.
Okay.
As I Lay Dying, the more I read it, might be my favorite novel.
Okay.
And I think that it is a great intro to Faulkner and all that makes Faulkner great, and all that makes Faulkner hard to read.
Fair enough. Yeah. I like it.
So if you like this sort of thing, make sure you hit the like button. If you've not already subscribed, subscribe. We aim to do a review at least once a week. We aim to do multiple things throughout the week, booktubishly. But we hope to see you here for the next review as well.
God damn, run it up to the minute.
Yeah, hopefully that thing's still fucking recording.
I think it is. That's the fucking thing, though.